the establishment of the commission to be responsible to determine wages and compensation for the public sector employees, harmonize the public sector pay system to reflect equity and merit, and to provide for other related matters. Now, the commission gears towards addressing salary distortions. Well, this means that there have been people who have graduated with their colleagues the same year with the same qualifications, but instead one will be receiving more salary than the other for obvious reasons. The commission was enacted on Thursday, 6th April 2023 by Parliament. So this morning, to discuss the commission's activities and plans, we have Alpha Osman Timbo, Chairman, Wages and Compensation Commission. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning in the program.
Good morning, Fabian. Good morning, people of Sierra Leone.
You were set up to address a problem. Let's start with what is the current, or what are the current disparities in wages and salary in state institutions?
Well, before coming direct to that question, you started by saying that over the years there has been distortions, where you cited the example of people who have the same qualifications, maybe same experience, same job responsibilities, but they have different pay structure. This happens as a result of a number of factors that I am here today at least to brief members of the public. But I always like to state that the state has always had the responsibility of ensuring that they look into the affairs and the welfare of its citizens. And that is adequately contained in Chapter 2 of our Constitution, where the broad policy objectives of the state are enshrined, including the social policy objectives of the state, where the state has a responsibility to ensure that they direct its policy towards ensuring that people have decent employment, humane conditions of service, there should be equal pay for equal work of equal value, and the institution of ensuring that people or children, disabled persons are all looked into equally. So over the years, the Constitution of Sierra Leone made certain provisions that to some extent have been responsible, for some of the disparities that have happened before.
Yeah, we'll get to look at that. Let's build the premise on understanding the situation as it stands. What are the current disparities in wages and salary in state institutions?
There are so many of them. I will start by saying, for instance, the president, right? In the public sector, there are so many persons earning more than the president, and that is not the case in most of the jurisdictions in the world, including the United States. You come to the UK, you come to Kenya, Ghana, or the rest. The president is always the highest paid person, but in Sierra Leone that's different. You have thousands,
top 5 highest paid people in Sierra Leone.
Thousands of people that are earning more than the president.
In the public sector, in state institutions?
In the public sector in Sierra Leone. Right?
Who are the top 5 highest people?
Well, in Sierra Leone you have the Chief Justice, right? You have the directors of some of state institutions, right? Even some of the commissions that we are currently heading, most of them, the salary structure is higher than that of the president and the vice president. At this particular stage, I do not want to go into the specifics for that, but I want to say categorically that there are so many persons that are earning before the president. But in terms of hierarchy, Chief Justice, the Speaker of Parliament, representatives of commissions established by government, they are earning more than the president.
So what led to the establishment of the Wages and Compensations Commission? It's actually out of a problem, and this is meant to be a solution to the problem. And the definition of that problem in itself, you'd assume, has perhaps established a blueprint for your institution to be able to swiftly launch into action. But that has not been the case, because your first meeting with state actors was in January of 2024. Is that a judicious spending of time and resources, going back to state institutions and having a meeting with them to understand your roles and responsibilities?
Definitely. You cannot discuss an individual's terms of and conditions of service without engaging the people that is going to be affected. And that's the key function of this particular commission, right? And you mentioned that whether we've not spent a long time. I want to say that this is a very new institution, right? And for us to be able to operationalize the system, it takes some time. For instance, right, the commission makes provision for the appointment of key staff, right? The first responsibility is given to the president, which he has executed, appointing the chairman, the chief executive officer, and the deputy chief, period, right? So the chairman, the deputy chairman, sorry, the chairman, the chief executive officer, and the deputy chief executive officer, these are just three personalities. Of course, we have the commissioners established by law. The first task that is expected of us is first to have a meeting of commissioners, right, which we have done. The first meeting, next week we're going to have a third meeting. The first meeting is, first of all, for us to be able to familiarize ourselves, and secondly, to make sure that we appoint the deputy chairman as provided for by the Act itself, where members of the commission have the responsibility to appoint the deputy. That we've done, right? Apart from that also, we have to ensure that we have a secured premises where the commission is capable of carrying its responsibility. As I am speaking now, we are currently housed at the Public Sector Reform Unit, where we only have 3 rooms, right? That of the Chief Executive Officer, the Deputy Chief Executive, and myself, right? What we have done as a commission within this short time, like you rightly mentioned, the first task was for us to be able to engage with key actors that are germane in the function that we are currently doing. Now we have developed an organizational structure for the commission.
Mr. Timbo,
we have to employ people.
Before I move to what really I struggle to grasp is, let's understand what's the lifespan of the Wages and Compensation Commission.
It's infinitum. It's going to exist permanently. And I think that is where the question you started by just saying, what are the disparities? And
yeah,
this is where
if you don't understand, we needed that as a premise to understand what we're dealing with.
Yes, that is true. We have recognized that there are disparities, but how they came about, that led to the establishment of the commission. These are the issues that I think people should first know, so that they know the intention behind the act.
But do you have a timeline as to when you would put out your first, maybe sort of a conclusive work on actually addressing the problem, the disparities within the sectors?
We do have a timeline.
What's the timeline? The
timeline is first to operationalize the scheme itself. And when I talk about operationalizing, we have to make sure that we employ those persons that are actually going to be part and parcel of doing the work, right? Which we are now doing. I gave myself and members of the commission that we have, within the space of 2 years, we should be able to do something that will make sure that people actually see exactly what we are coming forward to.
When does the 2 years countdown begin? Was it January of 2024?
From the day we started our work as a commission.
January
right?
2024?
Yes.
Okay, so this would lead us to 2025.
2025.
I wanted to know this because you talk about the current space you're occupying is just 3 rooms. Yeah. But the job has been given not for the purpose of comfort and convenience of those of you who have been given the privilege to serve the people of Sierra Leone, but for the work itself to be done, which is addressing the disparities. So pointing a situation of just utilizing 3 rooms space, it begs the question, are you working in the right direction?
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. Let me just say this. At least I have an experience of establishing institutions, right? NACIT, right? When the act was passed, right? The DG was appointed. What we first did was to make sure that we set up the directorates that are responsible to come and discharge this function. Mind you, this function is not for the chairman. The chairman is not like a full-time employee of the commission, right? What we have done now, and I think rightly so, is to make sure that we set up the organizational structure for the commission. As I speak, we have established a directorate for finance and administration. We would have a directorate for job classification, right? Job analysis and job evaluation. We would have a directorate for legal affairs, compliance. We would have a directorate that is responsible for compensation. Then we would have a directorate for communications and public affairs, right? All of these directorates have to be occupied by competent people who will be responsible to come and discharge the functions of the commission, right? These personnel have to be recruited for that particular purpose, right? And as I speak, we have finished the formulation of their job descriptions as well as the qualifications requirement that is needed for these people to be employed. It is when these people are employed and they occupy their rightful positions that they are competent enough to be able to start this particular process that we are talking about. Mind you, we are dealing with different legislations in terms of the work that we are doing. Like I am speaking, we have the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, before this time, that was responsible for the determination of terms and conditions of service for the judges, from the Chief Justice down to the Superior Court of Judicature, right on to members of the judiciary. You have the Police Council that was responsible for determining the terms and conditions of service for persons in the police force. You have the Defense Council that is responsible for the determination of terms and conditions for people in the military and other security apparatus and the rest. So all of these before this time have been responsible for determining terms and conditions of service for workers in their sector. And this has accounted over the years for the disparities that we are here to come and correct. For us to be able to do that, right? You remember in your intro, you said in the public sector. And the public sector does not, it covers the legislative, the executive, and the judicial arms of government. The civil service, you have the Public Service Commission that is responsible for the recruitment, the conditions of service of people in the public service. And when it comes to the teaching profession, it's different. The law makes provision, the Industrial Relations Act of 1971 makes provision for the minister responsible for matters responsible for labor and social security to establish trade group negotiating council that covers workers in that particular sector. So that is why you have like the Teaching Service Trade Group Negotiating Council. You have the Public Utilities Trade Group Council that deals with those that work in the nursing field, those that are working in the electricity. So all of these are different legislations which over the years confer the rights for those institutions to determine terms and conditions of service for their employees. So all of these have been put together and conferred to the Wages and Compensation Commission. So in terms of determining the new grading system that will reflect equity, like we have mentioned. If you are a teacher, you enter, if you are a graduate, you enter the teaching profession. You are a graduate, you enter the military, you want to enter the police force, you want to enter the civil service, right? You almost have the same job responsibilities. Over the years, because of the existence of these different institutions that at different points in time determine terms and conditions of service for their workers, that has accounted for the disparity. So for us to be able to come and harmonize that, that will not just take a day. And it is not going to be done by Mr. Timbo. Of course, I'll have the relevant work experience to be able to decipher all what I'm saying. But when it comes to actually looking at the grading system, making sure that the qualifications, the job responsibility and the experience that these people need.
About the United Nations, for example, their pay system, it's segmented into grades, which also factors, of course, your level of qualification, your years of experience, your position. We have a lot of disparities. One person at the same level of the other would be earning more based on the institution the person is, while the other, who does the same work, probably on the same level, earns less based on the institution. What are you putting together right now in terms of, especially that example of the UN, putting it into grades? So, and that grade system harmonizes it. So whichever country you're deployed, as long as it's at that grade, there wouldn't be disparity. what are you putting forward as a commission?
That is what I'm saying. And I have my own specific area of skills, expertise. Everyone has his. For instance, when it comes to the issue of job classification, right? Yes, I have experience, but I'm not the person that will have to. You have an expert that is responsible for that, right? For instance, you come to the civil service, which I can always say have the best in terms of the structure when it comes to the others, right? You have the HRMO, the Office of the Human Resource Management, right? Those are the people that are responsible for the gradation, putting them into various grades. Like I said also, the Defense Council has theirs, the police has theirs. So our responsibility now is to make sure that we study critically those different grade systems that have existed, attach to them relevant qualifications, and make sure that we harmonize. Otherwise, we will not be able to achieve the issue of equity that is mentioned in the Act itself. Mind you, people should understand the difference between equality and equity. We are trying to talk about equity
so,
here.
Yeah, you keep saying
so
to
for the UN system,
to harmonize it, bringing about equity.
Yeah.
But the question still remains,
Yeah.
how would you be harmonizing the remuneration system in state institutions that would bring about equity?
The how will come when we establish all of these directorates that we are seeing, employ the right quality of staff, right? Within the process, we undertake the critical study, the analysis that exists between them. And within that, we'll be able to come up with a system that will eventually move from what we are currently operating to the new system, where each and everyone that has the same qualification, the same experience in terms of just responsibility will see themselves in terms of fairness. So if you ask the how, it is going to take a process. First, as a secretariat, when we have the full complement of the staff, and that is why I mentioned initially about the office. When you talk about conditions, it is important that we house those that are supposed to do the work, Like you sit here in AYP, you must have, the manager should have an office, those that are doing reporting, those that are doing XYZ, they have different places. So that is what we are saying. That is why deliberately I started by saying the fundamental objectives of the state, specifically mentioned in the social objectives, where we talk about providing adequate conditions of service for workers. Mind you, we are going to deal with the welfare of workers. Charities begins at home. The commission that is going to ensure that this particular aspect is accomplished must be properly located so as for it to be able to attract the appropriate staff for them to be able to come and do their job. I know that people are having huge expectations, right? But we have to manage expectations. And I want to assure members of the public that we are going to follow methodically the stages that we ought to follow in order for us to be able to make sure that we accomplish this particular objective. Mind you, it's a very critical thing. Any group that you meet, the first thing that they ask you, when are we going to get our own increase? Some people are looking at it from an increase point of view. And all of these factors have to be taken into consideration.
But how do you foresee this playing out when, because of the disparity,
yes,
harmonization could, or most likely, lead to some people either getting an increase or others getting a decrease?
Of course.
But there's no way it's going to remain as it is.
No, it's not going to remain like this. For instance, we are guided.
So some will get an increment,
yes,
others will get a reduction.
Yes, and mind you, the Constitution of Sierra Leone, the only offices that it protects during the tenure of that particular individual for his or her emoluments not to be reduced is provided for in Section 155 of the Constitution. And it clearly indicates those offices, starting from the President, Cabinet Ministers, the Auditor General. It is clearly spelled out there. And when you look at some of the conditions of service, like I said, they don't have to be worried because there are so many people earning more than those offices that are created there. So we would still be guided legally.
Guided legally is one. Another guide perhaps could be the wage bill of the country,
of course,
which in itself is inflated, and there are concerns about how best Sierra Leone can be able to maybe save money in that area. What are the considerations, especially for the expenditure that the state would be embarking on as monthly salaries, when you have those now who would have to have an increment and those who would have, well, a decrease in their salaries? What are the considerations?
The one good thing about the commission is ensures predictability, right? In the future, it ensures predictability. And why I talk about predictability, because like I originally said, if the situation, the structures continue to exist like it is, say for the passing of this particular legislation, you will find out that when the president chairs the Defense Council, because that particular sector is opportune, no, to have the president as the chairman, whatever that is concluded there is automatic for it to be implemented. Similarly for the police, where the vice president is the chair of the police council, although under the director of the president, right? And when you look at the teaching profession, where you have a trade group council, after they have done what they're supposed to do, the minister comes in. So we find out that in terms of bureaucracy over the years, that has accounted for probably why the teaching profession over the years has been down. So in terms of the implications, I said the establishment of the wages and compensation in future leads to predictability, because all of these institutions established originally to determine conditions of, now they don't. It is the Wages and Compensation Commission, right? That does not exclude the responsibility and the functions of some of these establishments as provided by law. But the Wages and Compensation Commission, especially from the Directorate of Compensation, which will be dealing with salaries as well as pensions, will have representatives in those sectors. So the wage bill will be predicted. In terms of those... What's
the prediction? Would it swell up or would it be deflated?
It can take either form. It can take either form. And let me just make a comment on the issue of the inflation of the wage bill. The wage bill has to continue to be inflated. I want people to understand that.
What's the justification for that?
The justification for this is like the president has taken human capital development as a centerpiece of his administration. Government will always have to employ more teachers, right? Government will always have to employ more nurses. I hope you understand. These are critical sectors that the state will always have to need additional personnel. When I was in the Ministry of Education, trying to launch the free quality education, we did the analysis, the statistics that we require for us to be able to conclusively cater for all the children of Sierra Leone, for them to have schooling as provided for by the Constitution for providing basic education. You find out that we may need the services of about 108,000 teachers to be able to have every child to have a teacher that will be able to provide instruction for them. But as I speak, the teaching profession is not even 50,000, right? And we continue to have schools that are supposed to be approved by government, which means if we want every child to go to school, there should be more teachers. So the wage bill will have to continue to increase. What I can understand from people is there are certain positions, even within government, that are being duplicated, right? And the work of this commission, thank God the Act makes provision for other related matters, which we may bring to the attention of the Minister of Finance that controls the nation's purse, for those areas to be looked into, so as for savings to be provided, so that other critical aspects of government expenditure, which are unavoidable, will have to be done judiciously. But I want to say it here today, it doesn't matter who comes and be a president. If that particular president wants to know that he should do things that will satisfy the people of this country, you should always have to continue to employ teachers. You would have to continue to employ nurses. This I would say as a fact.
With your submissions earlier, it sounds as if the expectation should be that as part of your work, you would be putting forward an increment in the president's salary, making him the highest paid state worker?
Of course, definitely. I would not sit in that commission after looking at all the literature that we have read and leave that particular office again without putting the president of this country at the rightful position where he or she should occupy. And I can understand why maybe His Excellency the President took the deliberate step not to establish this commission during his first tenure in office, right? Because other people may have misconstrued that. He decided deliberately to make sure that it comes at a time when he is preparing his exit for the people of this country.
What are you looking at in terms of an increment?
Well,
What
I would not say that now.
What percentage are you considering?
No, I would not say that for now. You see, I am guided by a commission. I am just the chairman, right? And the composition of the commission is such that it occupies the highest officers of the state, the financial secretary, the solicitor general, the accountant general, the chairman public service commission. These are the highest decision-making persons in the country. We have to look at the I mentioned the predictability and also the ability of government to be able to pay. These are all enshrined in the Wages and Compensation Act. So we are guided by laws, we are guided by regulations. Although we have the responsibility to formulate our own rules of procedure, but this is a very new institution. Like I said, we have just had 1 or 2 meetings. We are going to have a 3rd meeting. So I still want to ask the people of this country to know that, yes, we are not in a hurry. The commission is not established to come and do a work for one day and it ends. It is a permanent institution. It's a permanent institution. It will have to be monitoring the wage bill of government on a monthly basis when the commission is actually functional.
The current minimum wage of the country stands at 800 leones.
Yes.
That has been a concern as well
Definitely.
to some who have suggested that it should be increased. What are your thoughts in that direction?
Well, I believe that too, but like I said, we will not do the work of the Minister of Labour. The Industrial Relations Act expressly make provision for the establishment of the Joint National Negotiating Board.
Interestingly, that also comes back as part of what you do.
Yes, exactly.
Which is what we talk about, the interconnection of all these institutions. Yes. Because you're there, wages compensation, yes. You're there to harmonize.
Of course.
And part of harmonizing also, the minimum wage comes into it as well.
Yes, that is why this act that we mentioned here, the first thing that it does, like I mentioned, is to repeal all the provisions originally that confers responsibility to people to determine their terms. And the Minimum Wage Act is one of those that are repealed, right? But that does not exclude the Minister of Labour setting up the Joint National Negotiating Board. The Joint National Negotiating Board advises on the issue of minimum wage, and the Wages and Compensation Committee will work with them, right? That is why in the Directorate of Compensation to be established, we have the area of the salaries. We would have an expert in the salaries, then we have an expert in pensions that will work with NASIT. Mind you, I have served government for about 15 years. This is the most complex job that I have ever had in terms of trying to unravel it. I want to be very frank with you. NASIT, I spent 2 years. This one is more difficult than the work that we had in NASIT. This one is more difficult.
You still have not spoken to your thoughts in the area of 800 leones being minimum wage.
Yes, I said it is low, but I said I'm not competent now to come and talk about its increase. That's what I'm saying. Let us be allowed to set up the structures that we ought to establish so that they take their rightful position, so we have the right experts that I can work with, so that my ideas with those who are competent in that particular field will be put together with our experienced CEO, right? We spend days and nights, trying to see how these things can be done. And it's doable, eh? But then we have to make sure that we do what we ought to do now to ensure that what we come out with in the future is something that is going to stand the test of time.
Luckily, you're part of the NASIT history.
Yes.
And remuneration is also connected to your benefit you would be getting, pension.
Exactly.
So it's not excluded from the work of the Wages and Compensation Commission.
No.
Certain categories of pensioners are really not satisfied with what comes back as pension. What are you putting together?
We are going to put together, like I said, NASIT still has its functions now as established in the Act itself, the NASIT Act. And thank God, His Excellency the President, during his tenure, he ensured that the pension level, for the current pensioners is increased, right, exponentially. Although it is still not very adequate for them, but that's a very good start. And that is one aspect, again, when I talk about we have to be careful in the way we carry out our job. The Directorate of Compensation that would have to be established will have the pensions and the salaries. Under pensions, they will be dealing with NACIT. And NACIT, before I left as Minister of Labour, we were looking at reviewing the NACIT Act, which talks about indexation of the pensions, which, if it is not looked at now, it will have a very telling effect on the resources of NACIT. These are complex issues, actually, that I'm saying. So we expect that while NACIT is pursuing that aspect of indexation, as I speak, government is currently paying pension to those persons who originally worked without being members of NACIT, and NACIT is undertaking that particular responsibility. And these are the people that are earning very low pension, apart from NACIT pensioners. I'm a NACIT pensioner. Relatively, I have a very good pension, in that particular area. Thank God that we established the institution and today it's functioning. So we have to make sure that the relationship, the nexus there, right? Because in NACIT, it is not only public sector employees that are contributing to NACIT, you have the private sector also. That's a different thing altogether. So, but that has to be addressed by that directorate that would have to be established for that particular purpose. They would have to undertake the studies, the analysis. They would have to do comparisons, both national as well as international. So that's why I said the work of the commission has just started. It's going to occupy the centerpiece of salary administration. And this is the right thing that we have done as a nation. We should have done that long years back. But previous governments, including previous government, there were hesitations as to establishing this commission. Still, we have issues that we are dealing with. Members of parliament and the rest other people still believing that their functions have been taken away. As I speak, we are having considerable pressure on institutions that originally they adjust their salaries internally without even government knowing, thereby putting themselves in an extra position that people don't know. But because the CEO has given a directive that since the time he took over the responsibility of determining conditions of service, those institutions no longer, now they are pressurizing us for us to be able to move fast, like you are saying, right? But I kept telling some of them, when it comes to the extreme, I say, okay, if you think that is too small for you, you can go where they want to pay you more.
What would it take for the commission to accelerate its progress? What do you need to speed up the work?
We need our office. You originally want to downplay. I am saying myself and the CEO, deputy CEO, cannot do this work. We are just the principal pioneers to make sure that we operationalize the scheme. And we are doing the right thing by ensuring that we provide the framework that ought to be established for the work to be carried. So we need to have our office. As I speak, the process is almost completed. If the Minister of Finance will listen to me after here, I'm going to his office to make sure that, because yesterday they said that has been almost concluded, to make sure that we are given the opportunity to move to our office so that we would have the opportunity of ensuring that we advertise for the key critical staff that are supposed to come and work in the commission with us for us to move this particular process forward. So for now, we do not have too many demands. Right? Next week we'll be having the manpower hearing to the Ministry of Finance for us to, for them to be able to determine our manpower needs for us to be able to take on. But myself, Mr. Banya and Mr. Bio, three of us cannot do this job. Thank God the Public Sector Reform Unit, they are providing extraordinary support to us and the Office of the Human Resource Management Office. But for the expertise that they have those, the speed at which we would have done some of these things would not have been able to do. So I want to publicly take this opportunity at least to thank the HRMO and the staff, as well as the PRSU and their staff who are working with us almost on a daily basis for us to be able to start like the grading system, doing these job descriptions, attaching qualification requirements for those kind of people that are going to do the job. I will not be doing that one.
What do you foresee as perhaps the greatest challenge in the execution of your functions?
The issue of liquidity, money, will always have to come. But the good part of it is that I am seized with as a presidential advisor, at State House also, I am also seized with the current policy measures that government is undertaking to improve on its revenue generation. About 2-3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity of attending a meeting that was organized by the Chief Minister, where the Minister of Mines and the Minister of Finance, we met together to look at the mineral assets of this nation. What the presentation that was made there, if we follow some of those particular policies and make sure that they are implemented, definitely the revenue base of this country will definitely be enhanced, and these things that we are talking about that seems impossible will be made possible. So let's give our president time for him to be able to at least discharge the functions of the big five, right? And the good thing that gives me satisfaction is the work that the Ministry of Public Administration is doing also, side by side with what we are doing in terms of restructuring the public service, making sure that a new code of conduct and all of these things are going side by side, because at the end of the day, when the capacity of the public service is enhanced, you find out that with adequate remuneration, their performance will definitely be increased.
I'll just head to that page now and read out some of your messages. I still have Alpha Osman Timbo in the studio, Chairman of the Wages and Compensation Commission. I'll read out a couple of those messages. Christopher Masako says, this guy just keeps talking about directors and theory. No practical explanation, no fact, just big English without explaining practically what they have done or will be doing. Why does he have to keep emphasizing on a building while you can work anywhere? It's time we stop just giving these guys positions just cause they've been rotating around in the government for ages. We have more young, vibrant people who can work. This thing of expertise is killing Sierra Leone. Usman Kavoni says, how long does it take for a fund to mature for disbursement to beneficiaries? Osfriend Kamara is saying, Mr. Minister, sir, what is your economic outlook of the government revenue that will equate to the ability to increase fair wages to meet with gross household income to match with inflation? Should the committee recommend an increase? Remember, most civil servants want to prove their mettle and show love for their country. Can you please remember to keep the banner high in this your initiative move? In truth, there is salvation. Kind regards. Swissman says, Minister, what are the particular age that someone's supposed to become a pensioner in Sierra Leone, and what's the specific amount pensioners are receiving as their monthly payment? Of course, I know that is 300,000, 500,000 or 1 million. A chicken wings amount. Mosdi responds to us friend by saying, as a product of that great center of excellence in learning, I hope he will consciously reflect on this. Veritate salus. Cor Janes says, if only the government will improve on pensioners' salary, that will help to stop the massive corruption. Ngooji says, this commission is a vital one. People have been robbed throughout the years based on the institution they're working for. Someone will be having the same qualification in the teaching field to that of a minister, but the minister is well paid than the teacher. Harmonizing these salaries is a step in the right direction. It should be speedily implemented because people have been underpaid throughout the years. It's a good news. Hope it will be fully implemented. Usman Kavoni says we should and must increase the wages for workers due to the fact that citizens are not able to afford to pay rent and buy other basic goods with what they earn. Tom Dowda says Mr. Timbo is very knowledgeable. Tom Dowda again says, please ask the UN to help you set up the commission with expertise and funding. Respond to these messages, and let's see if there's more time. Perhaps we could do another set of messages.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabian. The one who mentioned about the economic situation in the country vis-a-vis the work that we are trying to do. I think in my last submission, I did mention the fact that the measures that government is trying to adopt now, especially in trying to make sure that they improve on revenue mobilization, I said I believe that the future is going to be bright. The economic experts, that is why in the commission we have the financial secretary who controls with the Minister of Finance, the nation's boss, including the Accountant General and members of this particular commission. What I would not do in this particular interview, I see this is the first time we are appearing, and I will not come and discuss things that we have not taken as a decision for the commission. What I was just giving the highlights. So I believe with the technical expertise of members of my commission, whenever we start to look at these specifics, we'll come out with the solutions and we'll definitely be able to pass this to members of the public. Mind you, when I was giving the kind of work that we have done so far, I mentioned one particular directorate, that of the Directorate of Communications and Public Affairs, right? When once we operationalize these things, you would have a communications expert, not like me, right? A communications expert, somebody who would be there to go through these activities that we have done for him or her to be able to adequately be passing the message to members of the public. So I still want to say that we are still yet to have those people that are going to make sure that they carry that one. Somebody said, what is the age limit for pensioners? Right? The NASIT Act is very clear. Before the passage of the NASIT Act, the age 50 was the voluntary retirement and 55 was the compulsory retirement. With the passage of the NASIT Act, the retirement age was increased, the voluntary from 50 to 55, and the compulsory from 55 to 60. So as I speak, voluntary retirement is 55 years and the compulsory retirement is at 60 years. It is only when somebody attains this particular age that he or she is qualified for either a reduced pension or full pension as provided for by the NASIT Act. So for that person that asked that particular question, that is the answer. Somebody said they have robbed many people over the years by virtue of the fact that people with the same qualifications, same job responsibilities, depending to the department or agency that they work, they have different in salary. That is precisely one of the objectives for the establishment of this particular commission. But like I said, for us, at the end of the day, if we want to communicate well, we should be able to say, like, a director, Ministry of Development is earning this. A director at the Ministry of Finance is earning this. A director, Ministry of Labor is earning this, right? These are facts that I will not be able to release as at now, like we are speaking now. So that is definitely going to make sure that occupy the work of the commission. Somebody mentioned that, yes, the salaries have to be increased. You also raised that particular point, and I did say that at some point during the course of our work, some salaries will definitely have to be increased, and at some point also, some people will also have to experience like a kind of reduction. But at the end of the day, what is most critical is that we are providing terms and conditions of service for people who work in the Sierra Leone public service. So essentially, the other one said, there are younger people that can do this job. Definitely. That is why the directories that we'll be establishing, right, it's going to be open competition, right? That is where we need the experts to come and do exactly the work of this commission. And I kept saying that it is not Timbo that will be doing the calculation of ex gratia, benefits, and the rest. The person who will have to be doing that will have to be employed by this particular commission. So we are doing exactly what we ought to do to make sure that we operationalize the commission itself and put it in a strategic direction so that at the end of the day it will be able to discharge its mandate effectively.
What would determine how you would address this, especially in the areas where some people would have an increment and others you would have to slash their salaries. What would be the factors you would consider to determine that?
Many factors, but I still keep coming to the point that it is not what I think would have to do. This is a commission, right? Once we come to looking at the specifics, those institutions that we have seen that they are earning more, the others are earning less, sometimes we can even ask them the question, why do you think you did that before? What are the justifications? Maybe we may learn from them.
And what I would ask you now is perhaps,
yeah.
what's the work you've been doing at all as a commission since you were set up?
The work that I have explained is what we have done. It
no,
is
but the
not
actual
us.
work for which you were set up.
It's what I'm doing
Harmonizing.
now. Yes, it's not me.
Well, addressing the disparities
Where you are getting it wrong.
But
we are set up.
Most of the questions in that area, you keep saying it would not be your individual. So it brings us to what has the commission really been doing? The
commission, as I told you, the commission has done a lot of job, including, as I said, setting up the classification, the jobs that are expected to be advertised for people that are going to be looking at specifically these things that you are talking about. It is not the chairman of the commission and the chief executive officer of the commission that will be doing all of this in 2 months. No, I still maintain that what we have done is to make sure that we put the commission into perspective so that at the end of the day, when it takes off, it will be able to carry out its function. As I speak, the president is still yet to give us a date that he would officially, put this commission to the public. You understand? That notwithstanding, we have done exactly what I said we have done. If we have identified the categories of workers that should come and work with us, we can only advertise and get them to work when, in fact, when they are recruited, they have a place to go and sit and work. I still maintain that, even if people look at it in a different perspective, but we will not be moved by the urgency in which people expect a reflection of a change of their salary without doing exactly what ought to be done, so that once the institution takes off, it takes off in a sense of direction that will be sustainable and it will be credible.
It leads us to perhaps why they need to conduct an interview right now, to grant interviews right now when there's not much you can communicate with the public in terms of
this is exactly why it is important.
Trying to set up.
Yes, this is exactly why it is important. Now, members of the public are able to know that when we are established, right, we have been able to come up with a draft organogram of the institution that will definitely be carrying out this particular function. We have been able to identify those persons that can be recruited for them to be able to come and actually carry the work of the commission. And once, as I said, once those particular individuals are put into their various offices, then we come into the specifics. Mind you, we've taken about 3 months, right? 3 months. And people expect that this is
It's been over 3 months. Your inaugural meeting was in January of 2024. This is the 7th month of the year.
Yes.
So you've probably taken over 6 months.
We, as I said, we only have about 2 meetings of our commission, right? And we have to make sure that we put the systems that we ought to put in place so that the appropriate authority that has the responsibility to ensure that they give us the mandate does that. We still have to appeal to members of the public for patience, but the fact remains that we cannot do what we ought not to have done by now because we just want to satisfy people. At the end of the day, once we get it wrong, I tell you, many people will say many things. As at now, there is nothing that has broken. For instance, if you are earning X, you are still earning X. That does not stop your paymaster to pay exactly what you currently have. But the fact remains that, yes, we have to make sure that we set up the structures that are necessary, to ensure the effective takeoff of this particular institution. And as I said, I give commendation to my chief executive officer who has been working day and night to make sure that all the steps that we are talking about are put into perspective so as for us to take off in a manner that is going to be admirable for members of the public.
All right, thank you very much. Alpha Osman Timbo is the chairman of the Wages and Compensation Commission, and he's been here this morning on AYV talking about the work as a commission that was put together to harmonize remuneration within state institutions and sort of address the disparities there within.